Back from the weekend on Locked On Coyotes, we got a crossover episode for you guys. We are going to be crossing over with Locked On Blackhawks as we go through the Tankathon and we look at a retrospective of a trade between the two teams about 4 years ago. You're going to find out what that is in just a moment on this episode of Locked On Coyotes.
You're Locked On Coyotes, your daily podcast on the Arizona Coyotes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the show, everyone. A special crossover episode of Locked On Coyotes and Locked On Blackhawks. We want to thank everyone for making these shows your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. I am Robyn Leonia, joined by Carl Pavlik, my co-host of Locked On Coyotes, and Jack Bushman of Locked On Blackhawks on today's show for a great conversation. We're doing a little retrospective on today's show, as well as just a little tankathon, because both of these teams are predicted to be the bottom. But let's get going first. Jack, how you doing? How was your weekend?
It was fantastic. I just got back from a lovely trip out to South Carolina, spent some good time with my girlfriend's family. It was really fun to be out there and see the East Coast for the first time. I kind of didn't expect South Carolina to be the way it was. Not that I don't really know how I thought it was going to be in my mind, but I didn't think it was going to be surrounded with beautiful forests. The mountains are super cool to drive through. Went on an awesome lake, went boating for a day. So it was a lovely, much needed week away because the Blackhawks in their news has been chaos the past 3 weeks. So it was nice to get away for a couple of days for sure. How was the weekend for you too?
Unfortunately, we couldn't get away to the mountains because, trust me, I would love to escape just the Coyotes' existence right now, but that's not an option. Although things are starting to, I guess, look up. But yeah, nice, fun monsoon weekend.
Oh yeah, I mean that monsoon is helping us cool down. That's the nice thing, because it's like 110, and then like all of a sudden the rain comes and it's like 60.
Yeah, it is in the 90s at night now, which is just unheard of. It's not usually this hot at night, but it's nice to get some rain.
Oh my gosh, I couldn't even 90s at night. I think when I was in South Carolina, it was like 78, and I'm like, ooh, a little warm out here. I couldn't even imagine, but dry heat is a little different.
It is. It's still hot though. It's still very hot.
No doubt about it. 110. That's absurd.
Absolutely, but let's get into the meat of this show as we want to talk a little bit of retrospective, because now approaching 4 years ago, we looked it up. It was in November of 2018. The Coyotes and the Blackhawks made a trade that sent, I believe, to Chicago Dylan Strome and Brandon Perlini, and then coming from Chicago to Arizona, Nick Schmaltz. Obviously Strome is now no longer a Blackhawk, so let's get into the conversation.
And of course, Perlini no longer a Blackhawk, although that happened almost right away, right?
He wasn't around for long. I was someone though. I was always screaming to give Brendan Perlini an opportunity. The Blackhawks never really, I thought, gave him too fair of a shake, but to be fair, he went other places and it didn't really work out too well. So they probably saw something that everyone else did too. But yeah, Brendan Perlini kind of became an outlier in that trade, and it more so looked like a one-for-one swap after about a year there.
Yeah, that was very interesting because I think even at the time, like, Perlini didn't have much buzz in Arizona. So it was like one of those, maybe he can revitalize his chances. And then I think afterwards he went to Detroit. I could be wrong on that. But yeah, like he never really hit. He was always a guy, one of the many Coyotes of that time who had a solid rookie season and then could not follow it up with any kind of success.
Yeah, and he was an interesting player too, because I remember in Chicago, like, he'd have opportunities and you could tell he could shoot the puck. He was one of those guys who had a strong shot, maybe not a great playmaker, but had a little bit of offensive game to him. But it was really interesting. One thing in particular I remember about Brendan Perlini before he got dealt to the Detroit Red Wings was Mark Lazarus, longtime beat writer for the Blackhawks, wrote an article about how Brendan Perlini was not just like a diehard, like eat, breathe, sleep hockey guy, like big soccer fan from the UK, I believe, I think.
Yep.
He just wasn't someone who lived and breathed hockey. Like, it was just kind of something that he was really good at. Not to say that he didn't work on it or wasn't dedicated to his game or anything, but, especially at the highest level in the world, you kind of need to have that drive day in and day out to be the best. And he just kind of seemed like someone that it just wasn't his full on passion 100% of the time. So that was kind of an interesting storyline that kind of surrounded Perlini. But yeah, he ended up getting traded to Detroit. The Blackhawks actually did pretty good on that deal, seeing where Perlini ended up. They got Alec Regula, who is a former third-round pick defenseman of the Red Wings. He made his NHL debut last year for the Blackhawks, had a pretty good showing in 15 to 20 games at the end of the year, and then is probably going to be pushing to make the NHL roster later on in training camp this fall. So that was probably the best part of this trade for the Blackhawks, now that Dylan Strome, of course, is a member of the Washington Capitals.
I just want to stop real quick. I cannot imagine how insanely talented you can be to make the NHL and not like have hockey be like just kind of one of your side things, like one of many. Because like you said, it requires so much dedication to do it full time. But to even make it, God, that's just all the respect in the world. I could see why he didn't last too long, but goddamn, that's impressive.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, like I said, it's not like I'm like digging at his work ethic or anything. It's just some guys are different, and that's not their lives all the time. So it was just a curious case to hear that about Perlini for sure.
It is really funny though. Anytime I look at that trade, I always just think it's Strome-Schmaltz, and I just look. It's like, oh, that's right. Perlini was in that trade too.
Yeah, he was playing, remember?
Yeah, well, I mean, from the Coyotes' perspective, not long after we drafted UK player Liam Kirk, so we got like a new UK guy to just replace him. Like,
what's your front office doing, man?
There is a substantial kind of UK Coyotes fandom, and they have drafted 2 UK players, and I think it kind of works out. And Liam Kirk is like got a lot of buzz around him now, so like I think almost as much as Perlini had, because even though it was a first round, he was late and people didn't really seem to give too much credence to him, but people like Liam Kirk. So I don't know. They got a good guy in the UK.
There's also just a hype around a 7th round player, but
Yeah. You got to love the buzz that those 7th round picks get for no reason. You're like, hey, we might be something.
Yeah. He could do a thing, and it was 7th round, so why not?
He's out there.
Yeah. The 6th round guy is not doing it. The 7th round guy is. So clearly the 7th round is the next Wayne Gretzky.
Right.
I mean, 7th rounders have made great NHLers every now and then. Doesn't happen all the time, but they do. Some superstars even come out of the 7th round.
Pavel Datsyuk, right? Pavel Datsyuk, 7th rounder?
I believe so.
Datsyuk was. I know Joe Pavelski was.
So Liam Kirk's the next Joe Pavelski. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
You heard it here first on Locked On Coyotes.
I love it.
He's not going to change teams as many times, though. He's going to be Coyote for life.
Good.
Absolutely love it. In a little bit, though, we're actually going to go a little more in depth on the obviously that most important part, the Strome-Schmaltz part. We do have to get to that, but first, I do want to let everyone know about our sponsors at BetOnline, because BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check on all your sports betting needs, find all the favorite sports and events, and number one's online source for odds, lines, and games. Find reviews and news of every league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all your sports wagering information, from live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts. They have you covered. Head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Jack. Now let's get into that whole beefy part, because, like you said, Strome is now a member of the Washington Capitals, and I think when the news came that he wasn't going to be tendered a qualifying offer by Chicago. I was getting ready to reach out to you to talk about this because like it's like we knew that we'd had to do a retrospective because Strome in the situation that he's in, and Schmaltz in a unique situation because like I'm not sure if it's maybe just the way he plays or it's just the fact that like he's just highlighting a terrible team right now.
Yeah, it's tough to gauge for sure, but and that's honestly the case for Dylan Strome too. It seems like NHL GMs, they don't know how to gauge Dylan Strome, and it's really made for this weird back and forth over the last year with the Blackhawks leading up to him not getting that qualifying offer, because heading into this season, there was a lot of rumors around Strome's name, and it felt decently likely that the Blackhawks were going to move on to him, especially when Stan Bowman was here. Those rumors were kind of more prominent. And then, the season started as an absolute nightmare on and off the ice. Dylan Strome was kind of in the thick of it in Jeremy Colleton's doghouse, scratched 7 of the first 11 games for some godforsaken reason. He ends up getting fired, and then second half of the year comes around, and Dylan Strome cemented himself on the top line in between Patrick Kane and Alex DeBrincat, and they really carried the Blackhawks offense night in and night out. I mean, without those 3, Blackhawks games would have been unbearable. And Strome, by the end of the year, really strong season, by far the Blackhawks' best center this year. And then comes all the drama this offseason where even though he put up pretty good numbers in a respectable line, didn't get that qualifying offer. The Blackhawks wanted to go in a different direction. The Alex DeBrincat trade really was the final stone. I mean, if you're trading a 24-year-old 2-time 40 goal scorer, you're not going to tender Dylan Strome. That's just the direction the franchise was heading in. But I think it's really sad, and I know a ton of Blackhawks fans aren't happy with the situation. And while I get what Kyle Davidson is doing as the new general manager, he's really just wanting to start fresh. And if you're not a 18, 19, 20-year-old prospect, it's kind of tough to see where you're going to fit in on our roster right now unless you have a full no movement clause like Taves and Kane. So Dylan Strome just kind of got the short end of the stick, not just this summer, but really the last year and a half with the Blackhawks. And it's frustrating because a lot of us fans, when he was getting scratched early on in the year, we were screaming from the heavens, play Dylan Strome, give him a legit opportunity. He finally starts working his way into the lineup. He's still kind of playing bottom 6 minutes, which we know isn't a spot where he can have success. He finally gets that opportunity we're screaming for. He thrives. And now he's gone. So it's kind of just like, what the heck? There was no winning for this guy. So I feel for Dylan Strome because he did basically everything he could have, I felt like, in Chicago, and, still isn't part of the future plans. And it's upsetting. And I mean, the Blackhawks, how they're going to be the next few years, it's gonna be even tougher to watch. So I get the direction they're heading, but it's frustrating to see Dylan Strome capitalize on his opportunity and not get rewarded for it with this team.
Carl, does some of that sound familiar to you?
Oh yeah, no, that sounds like not only something I've heard from Coyotes fans whenever Dylan Strome was involved, but also just like people I know who like the Blackhawks since Dylan Strome has been involved. Like there's always been this like people don't know how to utilize him or what to think of him. I always attribute that to him being the 3rd overall pick, and he has expectations, and when he doesn't live up to what people think he should be, like it doesn't matter how good he's doing, everyone thinks they should be one level more, like, and they get frustrated with him. But it's crazy that keeps happening. And like you said, it's understandable there's no real spot for him in the Blackhawks' immediate future. Do you think that maybe like the team missed out by not like trading away his rights or like doing like a sign and trade like we just saw Calgary do or something? Because it feels like just letting him go for nothing is the ultimate insult.
For sure. And this is the weirdest part about the Dylan Strome saga here too, because NHL GMs, according to a couple of Blackhawks beat writers, the Hawks were really trying to trade Dylan Strome. They were really trying to do it, but apparently, I don't know how strong this word is or anything, but apparently the Blackhawks were only getting offered about a 6th-round pick for Dylan Strome's restricted free agent rights. And on that contract, he was owed $3.6 million he had to be tendered that at least $3.6 million on his qualifying offer. And nobody wanted that. Nobody wanted to do that. Apparently, all the Blackhawks were getting was a 6th-round pick. And then he hits the open market, and Washington goes and gives him a 1-year, $3.5 million contract. So it's kind of like either Washington was the only ones who were really in on Strome and they potentially overpaid him. But there apparently was chatter. Like, we heard Elliot Friedman tweet out saying a lot of teams were interested in Dylan Strome. And it was like, where was this the last 4 months? You know, maybe they just would rather take their chances on the open market and say, hey, hopefully this guy will sign with us rather than we give up something for him. But it really just made for this weird ending because he ended up signing for $100,000 less than what he would have gotten on his qualifying offer if a team just traded that. So it was really weird at the end. But again, this goes back to what I was saying before, where NHL GMs are kind of having this hard time of gauging Dylan Strome. And I think, Carl, you made a great point. The number 3 overall pick around Dylan Strome's name, I think, has completely changed how people around the NHL view him. And this was a really interesting tweet that Ben Pope from the Chicago Sun-Times, a beat writer, put out just a couple days ago. Dylan Strome, in his last 245 games, 4 years worth of games, he has 160 points. Got 1 year, $3.5 million from the Capitals. Vincent Trocheck, in his last 245 games, has 166 points, 6 more points than Strome. He got a 7-year, $39 million contract.
Wow.
What am I missing? Dylan Strome's the younger player by 4 years. What am I missing here?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I do want to say I looked it up because the Coyotes, I think the big time when they acquired someone's rights, other than the 2 recent NCAA players, when they acquired the rights for Alex Golgoski, it was for a 5th-round pick. So like a 6th for Dylan Strome just seems, it seems low. But I mean, honestly, like if you're the Blackhawks, why not take it? Like, why not just have a 6th-round pick and be like, hey, something. We're not going to re-sign him. We know we're not going to re-sign him. So we're getting something out of it. Because it feels like just getting nothing. It's
sucks.
Yeah.
For sure. And that's not the first former Blackhawk now that the Blackhawks have let walk for free. They just let that happen with a couple of other guys as well. And a few in last year's free agency class too. And it's really frustrating when that situation happens. And yeah, there were a lot of fans saying, hey, why not get the 6th-round pick? My only thing that I could think of is that Kyle Davidson didn't want to budge as a new general manager. He maybe didn't want to look weak and accept an offer that he wasn't 100% wanting to do. That's the only thing that I could possibly think of, unless that, like, at least get a 6th-round pick like we were talking about earlier. It can happen. Doesn't happen often, but it can happen. And that's the name of the game for the Blackhawks right now, is acquiring future assets. So yeah, that one was a little bit of a brain twister as well. The whole Dylan Strome saga is, let me tell you too.
Although I will say, now that you mention it, like if the Blackhawks are starting a rebuild, you're a new GM, you don't want to look like you can be pushed around. So yeah. I can see that like math going, be like, hey, we're gonna take a hit this time. We're gonna not get as a return when we could, but hopefully we don't get screwed over 2 more deals from now. That makes sense.
That's literally the only thing that I can think of, Carl.
Once again, you are listening to Locked On Coyotes, our crossover episode with Locked On Coyotes and Locked On Blackhawks. We're going to take we'll cut this one short a little bit. We ran a little bit long, but that's okay because we have a part 2 coming for you guys on tomorrow's episode. You guys are not going to want to miss it. But in case you like this part 1, don't forget to leave a review, like, comment, subscribe if you are yet to already. We're available everywhere you get your podcasts, including on YouTube. Don't forget to interact with us on social media or Facebook, facebook.com/LockedOnCoyotes, on Instagram at LockedOnCoyotes, and on Twitter at LO_Coyotes. I am personally at Robyn_Leano. Carl Pavlik is at Carl Pavlik FFH. Interact with us, ask a question you might have. We might answer it right back, or on a future episode of the Locked On Coyotes podcast. Thanks again, everyone, for listening to today's episode. Hope you guys are staying safe out there. Hope you guys are staying healthy. And don't forget to howl on.